Hello teachers, and welcome to this Building Effective Teaching course. This is a time for the module UAEH Teachers Can Make It Real to start running. And we wanted to start by telling you why we decided to call this module UAEH Teachers Can Make It Real. Among the many reasons for which we chose this name for this course, the main one is that we as teachers, you as our colleagues, are the ones who make it happen in the classrooms. You are the ones on the ground, and without you, this process of teaching and learning wouldn't be complete. You are the ones facilitating, and we want to emphasize facilitating, because we want you to work hard in order to help our students learn, because remember that they are the reason for this institution to exist. And for that reason, we want to move on towards this topic, which is a bit polemic, we would say, but really, really important. That is how ELT in Mexico takes place and how the teaching of English takes place at the UAEH, at the Autonomous University of the State of Hidalgo. One of the institutions that started to be involved into the challenges of the teaching of English in Mexico is known as Mexicanos Primero. They are a group whose only interest is to identify and to analyze how different things happen in Mexico, how the government could improve certain activities for the benefit of the population. And in this case, they carried out some research with regard to how Mexican students learn English. And guess what? They found out that low levels of competence in English are really, really common all over Mexico. Some of the reasons why this is happening is because teachers tend to teach English through Spanish. Imagine that. Would you teach English through Spanish when you expect your students to speak English? What do you think, teachers? Sometimes we believe that if we teach grammar to our students and that if our students memorize huge lists of vocabulary, at the end of the semester or at the end of every period of teaching, our students will be able to speak English. But the reality is that there must be this consistency between what we teach and what we expect our students to prove to us through the tests. If we teach our students vocabulary and grammar, we can only expect our students to get command of grammar structures and of vocabulary. If, on the other hand, we expect our students to speak English, we should emphasize on our performance in the classroom, speaking English all the time, giving instructions all the time, teaching the book through English, but not only being the model of classroom English for our students. It is also important that we take our conversations into other areas of interest of our students, for them to have this opportunity of try themselves communicating in English in different situations, which are not only the classroom, which are not only the things that have to do with the book, the things that have to do with the exercises we tell them to work on, but other more spontaneous topics. The reality is that Mexican users of English in real communicative situations are super, super uncommon. It is mainly in the north part of Mexico that people have the opportunity to practice their English with foreigners. It is also common for people to practice their English in these cosmopolitan cities or in these very touristic places like Cancun, like Acapulco, like Mexico City, like Guanajuato. You know, these cities that are often visited by foreigners. And not necessarily because all the visitors are Native Americans or native British people, but because English is the language that people uses in order to exchange ideas, right? But we as teachers have the chance and should be, like the source from which our students feel motivated to express their ideas in English. Mexicanos Primero identified these aspects that we have mentioned, like teachers who want to teach English through Spanish, like the low chances that are there for our students to practice English in Mexico. And also, they mentioned the role of standardized English proficiency tests in Mexico. And it is very sad to mention that usually people used to pass these tests whenever they had been trained in private institutions. Fortunately, it is more common that public institutions pay a lot of attention and a lot of effort trying to provide quality education in English. Training of quality in English as well for students to take these exams. And a proof of this is that, that the majority of people who take these specialty exams for people who have been trained in medicine, when they want to take a specialty course, they have to take a section of the test which is in English. So it is not only that students have to take these international certification tests, but also it is real life situations in which Mexican students have to deal with English for them to achieve better opportunities. Going back to standardized English proficiency tests, we should state that there are different brands and that there are different versions of these exams, as you all know, as ELT professionals. We have IELTS, we have TOEFL, we have TOEIC, we have a wide range of tests that have been created by Cambridge, like CAT, PET, First Certificate, etc. But these tests prove that our students are proficient in English. The reality is that sometimes our students spend huge amounts of money paying for these certifications, and that sometimes they are trained to take the tests. It is kind of sad because we are the ones who have to make sure that our students become competent in English. And you would probably agree on the fact that the main competence that our students need in this world is communication, face-to-face communication. Of course, some of our students need English only to understand information when they are in postgraduate courses or just reading for pleasure, when they travel also, which is mainly communicative English. But the teaching of English is super broad in terms of what is the purpose of our teaching. A common concern for teachers has always been what is the right way to teach English. We have been trained as teachers on how different methods and approaches work, what are the elements that are involved as well, and what are the expected results. Many methods and approaches can be mentioned, such as grammar translation method, direct method, the audiolingual method, the communicative language teaching approach, and many others. The thing is that nowadays we live in the post-method era. Experts in ELT, researchers on second language acquisition agree that the right approach to teaching of English is the one that we as professionals, as experts, identify for the kind of English that we have, that English students that we have in our classrooms. Some students learn one way, some others learn better in another way, but it is not that we have to implement only one method or only one approach, but that we have to take the best from each method and bring it to the classroom for our students. Everything starts with an idea, we have to move forward with a plan, and we must take action on the kind of results that we expect to get. At the Autonomous University of the State of Hidalgo, one thing that has helped us to provide a serious way or a serious path for everybody to be framed with the right teaching skills, with the right teaching methods, with the right strategies, and on the side of students, with the right teaching, has been the development of some coursebook series. Make It Real Junior was developed for high school students. Make It Real Professional was developed for university students. And though many people think that they are the same thing, the reality is that junior books were developed in order to help students to have this context that they are familiar with in prepa, and also to study English, practice English, and also to include in the regular practice of English situations that happen in their daily life as prepa students, things that have to do with the subjects they take, and also situations that demand that they take advantage of the skills they have developed in order to deal with communicative situations in English. Something very similar happens in Make It Real Professional, but the thing is that there are certain activities at the end of lesson 3 of each unit which demand that university students relate the English they have already grasped with academic and professional situations from their specific fields of study. That is the case of law students who would have to relate English to common situations that lawyers face. The same happens with medical students, the same happens with nursing students, the same happens with biology or design students. Now, many years have passed since the first coursebook series were released. It is a time to make changes. It is a time to see what worked well, what can be improved, and this is why the university decided to work on a new book series for prepa students. This series is going to be called Go High, and there are going to be 11 course books. Because in the past, prepa students were expected to get an A2 level, but currently we have realized that students with higher levels of English have been enrolled in prepa. For that reason, Go High is also considering to help students who enter prepa with a good level of English to consolidate their level of English. For that reason, students who enter prepa with a B1 will have the chance to move on with their English and take it to higher levels. Some concepts that are really important for everybody to know and that were also taken into consideration when the authors of the books were working on the design of these materials are the use of English as a lingua franca, because everybody knows that English is the language that internationally is used for people to exchange ideas either in education or in business. The natural approach of acquisition of the language, because as Mexicanos Primero identified that some teachers wanted to teach English in Spanish, we, as part of the university, are trying to encourage teachers and students to teach and to learn English in this way, in the same way in which we were taught our mother tongue, or in the same way in which we acquired our mother tongue. We are also trying to provide an immersive environment using the books throughout the different sections, lessons, and units of the book, but also through the teaching that we as responsible for the groups will be providing to our students. That is, as we said, using English as a main classroom language and using English for all kinds of situations, not only English that is based on the contents of the book and that stuff. The use of cognates. In Go High, in Make It Real Junior or Professional, you will see that cognates are there on the first levels for our students to feel that they understand English. Something that didn't happen in the past or something that they didn't have the opportunity to experience previously. Cognates give us the chance to make our students feel confident about what they read and about the way in which they express their ideas. The contexts that are there in the books are familiar to students as well, mainly on the first levels, mainly on the A2 levels of these books. That is in this way because it has been proved by experts that if the situation of a language learner is familiar to him, chances for him to understand and chances for him to express his ideas are higher. The kind of activities that are there in our books were task, text, content, and skill-based. All this has to do with input and output, and all this has to do with the 4 communicative competences of the user of the language. Accuracy and fluency are something that we always want to raise awareness on, and that is because we have to make a balance on the kind of result that we want our students to show after they are exposed to our materials or to our teaching. Accuracy has to do with avoiding mistakes. Accuracy has to do with producing the right grammar. But fluency has to do with being able to express our ideas in a spontaneous way. No matter if we commit mistakes, since we are not native speakers of English, we know, even as teachers, that as long as we communicate our ideas fluently, without paying a lot of attention to the kind of mistakes that we might commit, communication will bloom. And that is what we expect our students to achieve. We want them to become confident. Of course, we want them to develop appropriate grammar, and we want them to become accurate. But there must be a balance, and we, as the facilitators of the different courses that we're going to be delivering, we have to make sure that we take care of accuracy and fluency at the same time, okay? And interlanguage is a very, very important aspect to talk about, since it is the clue that we as teachers should be monitoring within our classes and among our students. Because the interlanguage, as you might remember, is this concept that Krashen developed of the I+1 Interlanguage Plus One is always evolving, and it is different among the members of our classrooms. But it is also important that we always provide our students with opportunities to increase their understanding of English, to increase their command of the language. Some of our students are usually identified as weak students. Some of them are also known as average students, and some of our students in a group are also known as strong students. That is because their interlanguage is different. And that is also because they are dealing with different learning processes of the language. So we have to be monitoring how it is that our students progress in this evolving and never-ending process of improving their command of the language. Whenever you have a student who is only able to respond with yes, no, please pamper them and please encourage them to continue working with his language to the point in which this student will be able to respond to the input we give him with sentences or with more fluent English. In the same way, you will see that students who are average students will soon be able to develop more fluency to the point in which they become strong students, the strong student in the class. On top of all, after having discussed what is the national setting of the teaching of English and how learning has been also taking place, and also having mentioned how the university decided to implement strategies for the benefit of our students, we must say that the objective is to have proficient users of the language at the Autonomous University of the State of Hidalgo. The PREPA objective is to achieve A2, the A2 level of the Common European Framework of Reference for Languages. And for university students, the objective is to reach the B1 level. For that purpose, the TOEFL exam is the standardized exam that the institution has chosen so that our students demonstrate their command of the language. For this reason, teachers, we expect you to help us to deliver these courses and to use these materials in the best way. One thing that we consider to be as a strength with regard to the development of these materials is that in contrast to international course books that have been developed for the world, the advantage of using Make It Real Junior or Professional and Go High, as you have seen, is that these materials were created for our students, thinking on the kind of advantages that are there for them as Mexicans, as Mexican speakers, these things of cognates, this thing of the contexts, and also this confidence that they can develop with our support. So teachers, we expect you to use these materials in the best way possible. No doubt, the platform provides us with a lot of support so that our students develop these accurate patterns of the language that the book does not really encourage, that the book presents, but which is not there for our students to have practice and practice and practice with this accuracy aspect of the language. But you will find that in the platform, and soon we will be talking about that. Thank you.